Wasn't even the worst part. The lies started long before that day. Fake apologies, a stolen inheritance. A sister's fake pregnancy used to erase my real one. How does a family turn so cold? What would you do if your parents sided with the one person trying to destroy you? What time are you listening to this? And where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. I'd really love to know. Sunday mornings in our neighborhood always smelled like cut grass and perfume. That day, I remember the scent clinging to my clothes as I stepped out of the car, 7 months pregnant, clutching Miles's arm. His hand was warm, steady. Mine was cold with dread. We walked up the steps of Grace Baptist like every week, but something was off. The way Mrs. Hawthorne smiled too tight. The way Deacon Mills nodded but looked past me. I'd felt it growing, this quiet storm. But I told myself, it's just in your head. I lied. The service began with hymns and prayer, same as always. Then Pastor Simmons opened the floor for moments of reflection. That's when she stood up. My mother, Elaine. She was always in control of every room, even when she played modest. She walked to the pulpit in her navy dress, hair pinned just so, Bible clutched like a weapon. I feel led to speak today, she said, her voice syrupy, as a mother burdened with heartbreak. My breath caught. She didn't say my name, but she didn't have to. She quoted Proverbs, twisted the words like wire. A wise son brings joy, but a foolish child brings shame. People shifted in their seats. I felt their eyes on me. There is no greater grief, she continued, than watching your own child walk away from righteousness and carry consequences of rebellion in her body. Gasps. One woman muttered, "Oh my God." Miles's hand tightened around mine, but I couldn't move. I sat frozen. My baby shifted inside me as if trying to hide. Elaine finished her performance, returned to her seat with the calm of someone who'd just saved a soul, not crucified one. After church, silence followed us. No congratulations, no, "you're glowing." Just stares, whispers, retreating backs. Miles opened the car door for me, but my hands trembled so badly I couldn't buckle the seatbelt. "She planned that," I whispered. "She ambushed me." Miles looked at me like he didn't know what to say, so he said nothing, just drove. That evening I got a notification from the church women's group. Elaine's letter had been posted. I opened it, still in my maternity robe, still reeling. "To my sisters in faith," it began, "I ask for your prayers as I grieve a daughter who has rejected guidance and brought scandal upon herself." No name, no detail, just enough implication to bury me alive. "She's refused to marry the father," the letter read. "She calls it independence. I call it rebellion." The comments piled in, "Praying for your family. May she find her way back?" "I always suspected something was wrong with that girl." My inbox exploded. "You've really fallen far." So disappointed. "You used to be an example." I walked to the bathroom, sat on the edge of the tub, and scrolled through the messages with numb fingers. Then came one from Becky, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. "I always thought you'd be the golden one." My throat tightened. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. Puffy eyes, red cheeks, a woman unraveling. "They don't know the truth," I whispered, then louder, fiercer. "But they will." I woke up to the buzz of my phone lighting up again and again. It was still dark out, barely 6 a.m. Miles was snoring lightly beside me. I sat up, heart already racing, and opened my messages. There were over 100. Some were short. "Praying for you." Others more pointed. "I hope you find your way back to God." Then the cruel ones. "Shameful. Your mother raised you better." Then I saw Danica's name trending in the church women's forum. I tapped the link. The post started with a photo of her from last Thanksgiving, smiling, holding a plate of food, her hand gently resting on mine. The caption beneath it was sugar-laced venom. "I love my sister deeply. Even though she's hurt me in ways I can't fully explain, I choose to forgive her. That's what God would want." My stomach turned. What hurt? What was she even talking about? She went on, "I've struggled watching her make choices that affect not just her life, but all of ours. Still, I'll always be here, no matter how distant she becomes." Comments rolled in like a wave. "You're such a light." "This is real maturity." "God bless you, Danica." Not one person asked what she meant. Not one person asked me. Miles came in holding coffee. "Hey," he said gently. "You okay?" I held up the phone. She weaponized forgiveness. Now everyone thinks I'm the villain. He sat beside me, tried rubbing my back. I pulled away. "Don't!" I snapped. "I can't do soft right now." His face fell, but he stayed quiet. I scrolled down. That's when I saw it. A comment from Derek. Derek, my ex from years ago. The one I thought I might marry once. He was verified now. Successful, apparently. His comment? "I hope you've changed, Lori. You used to chase attention more than love." It felt like ice water down my spine. I clicked his profile, then my messages. Sure enough, there it was. "Danica reached out to me. Said you were having a tough time. Thought maybe I could say something helpful." Helpful? She'd baited him, then set me up to look like some desperate narcissist. I closed my eyes. 16 years ago, we were in our shared college apartment, fighting. I had just gotten engaged. Danica hadn't been dating anyone serious. She stared at my ring, then hurled a framed photo of us at the wall. "You always get everything," she screamed. "I'm tired of pretending I'm happy for you." I had pushed that memory down. Until now. I opened a note on my phone and started typing. "You're not fooling anyone. Stop hiding behind scripture. Say what you mean." But I deleted it. My hands were shaking too much to type. "No one's gonna believe me now," I whispered. Miles touched my shoulder. I didn't move. Then, another buzz. Email from my parents' estate attorney. Subject line: inheritance inquiry. I didn't open it. Not yet. I just stared at it, breath caught in my throat. The knock at the door was sharp, almost aggressive. I wasn't expecting anyone. Miles opened it, and a delivery man handed him a thin, certified envelope. No smile, no small talk, just business. I stared at the return address, my mother's law firm. Inside was a typed letter, emotionless and sterile. No dear Lori, no love mom. Just a demand. I was to formally relinquish my claim to the Harding estate within 72 hours, or I'd be disowned, legally and publicly. Miles stood behind me, reading over my shoulder. "This is an ultimatum," he said, eyes narrowing. "She's not playing around." I said nothing. My hands were cold. "She says I'm unfit," I murmured, scanning the next line. "That my choices reflect instability and moral ambiguity." The words blurred. I tried to blink them away. All I could hear was her voice, years ago, spitting, "You'll never amount to anything if you don't learn to obey." It wasn't just words on paper. This was her final play, financial excommunication. 16 years ago, I remember kneeling at the foot of her bed, asking for help paying for a college test prep course. She barely looked up from her magazine. "We've invested enough in you. Ask your father." But when Danica wanted to attend a dance academy in California, they booked her flights that same week. "I'm not after money," I whispered to myself now, letters shaking in my grip. "I'm after a name, my name, and they want to erase it." Miles touched my arm. "You could fight?" I turned to him. "It's not just about inheritance, it's a message. If I walk away, she wins." "Then don't walk away," he said simply. The next morning, I started digging through our filing cabinet, looking for old tax returns. I needed any document that might help. My hands paused on a plain envelope tucked between folders, labeled in my father's clean handwriting, "Revised Will Confidential." I sat down, heart hammering. Inside was a notarized document dated 6 months ago. It confirmed Harold and Elaine had revised their estate plan. The assets, all of them, had been transferred into a trust. Danica was the sole beneficiary. No mention of me. They'd already done it. The ultimatum was theater. The will wasn't a threat. It was a memory hole, inked and signed. I stared at my father's signature. For years, I thought he was the quieter one, the buffer between me and her. But there it was, his name, perfectly aligned with hers. Unity and betrayal. I couldn't breathe. The baby kicked hard beneath my ribs. That kick grounded me. "They want silence," I said aloud, "but I was born loud." I grabbed my phone and stepped outside into the thick spring air. Houston humidity clung to my skin, but I felt sharper than I had in days. I hit the dial. "Hi, this is Lori Harding. I'd like to speak with attorney Dennis Marks." "Yes, it's urgent." The soft lighting in the OB/GYN office should have been comforting. Gentle lullabies played from a mounted speaker, and pastel brochures lined the wall. Tips for first-time moms, what to pack for the hospital, bonding before birth. Miles sat beside me, hand on mine, thumb brushing small circles over my skin. The baby kicked just as the nurse called my name. For one moment, I felt whole. Everything looked fine, they said. Baby growing strong, healthy heart. Miles smiled all the way back to the car. Then I opened my phone. A photo of Danica, bare feet in the backyard, arms cradling a pillow against her belly. The caption read, "Our miracle is finally happening, God's timing is perfect." Thousands of likes. My breath caught. Elaine had commented below, "We've waited so long for this. Praise him." I didn't speak for 10 minutes. I stared at the screen until the edges blurred. Miles pulled into the driveway, still talking about baby names and diaper brands. I couldn't hear him anymore. 16 years ago, Danica tore up my acceptance letter to NYU. I'd found the pieces in the bathroom trash. "It should have been me," she'd whispered when I confronted her. "It's always you." Now she was doing it again, but this time on a grander stage. A friend from church messaged me later that night. "Did you see Danica's post? I'm crying. A real miracle after all these years." I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled. One photo, then another. A black and white ultrasound image. Perfectly centered, clean, pristine. It looked familiar. Too familiar. The next morning at my OB/GYN office, I spotted it again, on a promotional pamphlet in the waiting room. Identical, stock photo, generic fetus profile. Not hers. Danica had faked it. I took a copy of the pamphlet home, laid it next to my screen, and matched the curves. Every detail lined up. I texted the proof to Miles. He called immediately. "You can't go public with this. Not yet. If you do, they'll spin it. You'll look jealous. Let them dig their own grave." I wanted to scream, but he was right, so I stayed silent, outwardly. Inwardly, I lit the first match. That night, I opened a hidden folder on my laptop. I named it Truth. I saved every screenshot, timestamps, likes, comments, reposts. I recorded Elaine's podcast clip about faithful mothers, noting how her voice cracked when she said, "One of my daughters. A blessing." Only one? I opened a voice message from Elaine, left days ago but still lingering on my phone. Her tone was syrupy, but her words cut like frost. "Some babies are born of love, others, just mistakes that manage to grow." I pressed replay, twice, then I pressed save. The baby kicked again, sharper this time, like she was pushing back. I placed my hand over the curve of my belly. "They're building a lie," I whispered, "but I'm going to bury them with the truth." The silence between Miles and me stretched like smoke as we sat in the living room. Papers sprawled across the coffee table. Legal options, estate documents, notes from attorney Marks. I floated in and out of the discussion, nodding at the right moments, but I wasn't really there. "I think we should consider a restraining order," I said quietly. Miles didn't answer right away. He folded the corner of a legal pad, stared at it like it held a different answer than I had spoken. "Against Elaine?" he asked, like the name still caught in his throat. "I don't know if that's smart." I didn't need him to spell it out. He was afraid. Not for our safety. Elaine wasn't the gun-toting kind, but afraid of the fallout, the gossip, the subtle blacklisting. She had friends on school boards, church councils, neighborhood committees. "I'm not asking you to go to war," I replied, "just to stop pretending we're not already in one." He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. My phone buzzed again. Another unopened message from my father. The fourth one this week. I didn't have the energy to open them. I already knew they didn't say what I needed them to. The next day, I met him at a diner off Memorial Drive, the same booth we used to sit in every other Sunday. I wore black, not to grieve, but to armor myself. Harold looked smaller than I remembered. Shoulders slouched, hands folded like a man waiting for judgment. "I need to ask you one thing," I said. "Did you sign off on the will? Did you give everything to Danica?" He stirred his coffee slowly. "Your mother said it was what made the most sense." "Sense for who?" I snapped. "For the daughter who's faking ultrasounds, or the one who's actually pregnant and trying to survive?" His eyes never met mine. "This family has suffered enough," he said softly. "Let's not divide it further." I laughed, but it sounded hollow. You think I'm the one dividing it? You don't understand your mother's pain. No, I said, standing, but I'm beginning to understand yours. You weren't silent to protect me. You were silent to protect her. I left my coffee untouched. That night I couldn't sleep. My body ached. My stomach tightened every time I thought of Harold's voice repeating that phrase. Don't divide it. Around 2 a.m., I opened the old family email account we used to handle estate bills and appointments. I wasn't even sure the password still worked. It did. Buried under folders of legal correspondence was an email titled, Clinic Confirmation. A forwarded invoice from a fertility clinic dated 6 months ago. Not mine. It was a receipt for IVF treatment, paid in full, by Harold. The recipient? Danica Harding. I froze. The timestamps matched her first miracle post almost exactly. He hadn't just failed to protect me, he had bankrolled the lie. I collapsed onto the carpet, my knees unable to hold the weight of that betrayal. The air in the room turned cold, like it too had given up on warmth. I wasn't just abandoned, I was erased. Later that evening, I drove to an overlook just outside the city. It used to be our secret spot. Dad and I would go there to fish, to talk. When Mom was too loud, when Danica got all the attention, when I was still his favorite. I sat on a rock overlooking the city lights, clutching a stone in my palm until it bit into my skin. I didn't scream. I didn't cry loud. I let the pain sit quietly, like it had every right to stay. There's no betrayal louder than the one delivered in silence. I dropped the rock. My phone buzzed. Elaine. I stared at her name, then tossed the phone into the passenger seat. This ends at the baby shower, I whispered. And this time, I meant it. The room smelled like vanilla cupcakes and lavender oil. White balloons bobbed against the ceiling, soft jazz hummed under the chatter, and for one suspended moment, it all felt safe. I stood near the refreshment table, Miles beside me, his hand resting on my back as if to remind me I was still here. Still whole. Pastel streamers hung like hope. Sarah had outdone herself. Diaper cake centerpieces, a wall of handwritten wishes for the baby, and even a tiny floral throne set up just for me. I smiled. I actually smiled. I remember thinking, maybe this is where everything changes. Maybe today I get to feel celebrated, not cursed. Then the door opened. It didn't slam. It didn't creak. It just opened. And with it came a chill that cut through the room like a switch flipped on the wrong memory. Elaine and Danica. Every conversation paused. Every eye turned. Elaine wore cream, like she was attending a christening or preparing for a public relations shoot. Danica floated behind her, faux radiant, cradling a barely there bump no OB would certify. Sarah's face went pale. They weren't invited. They don't need invitations, I muttered. They're the event. Elaine made her way to the front, plucked the mic off its stand. Before we cut the cake, she said, smiling to no one, I just want to say a few words. I braced. Motherhood, she began, isn't just about biology. It's about worth, stability, grace. People nodded politely, unsure where this was going, but I knew. Every syllable carried a blade. She turned her eyes to me. And not every womb brings blessing, some bring pain. Miles gripped my hand tighter. I didn't move, didn't speak. I kept my eyes forward, because if I broke now, I'd be the problem. Sarah stepped forward, tried to take the mic. Elaine, this isn't the time. I'm done, Elaine said sweetly, and handed it back. Enjoy the party, everyone. But the party had already died. Minutes later, Sarah pulled me aside, avoiding eye contact. I need to tell you something, she whispered. Danica's been reaching out, threatening to report my daycare for violations, made-up ones. I froze. She said if I went through with the shower, I'd regret it. I stared at her. So what are you saying? She swallowed hard. I'm sorry, Lori. I can't afford to lose my business. I have to pull out. Sarah, please. You're my only real friend left. Her eyes filled. I know. Then she left. And the moment she did, it was like a signal. Conversations dimmed. A few women gathered their purses. Others muttered something about early dinner plans and filtered out with guilty glances. Even Sarah, even now. I was officially on my own. Later, I stepped out onto the courtyard patio, needing to breathe. The air was warm but heavy. thick with magnolia and disappointment. I sat on the edge of the fountain, closed my eyes. Then I heard the heels. Click, click, click. Elaine. She stood in front of me, arms crossed like a judge. "You made quite the scene in there," she said. I didn't say a word. "Exactly," she snapped. "Always the martyr." I stood. My belly shifted with the weight of the baby. I didn't want this confrontation, but I wasn't afraid of it either. "You don't get to shame me here," I said. "Not now, not anymore." Elaine's eyes flared. "You've torn this family apart with your stubbornness, your accusations, your selfishness." I took a step forward. "And you've propped up a lie. You made Danica your fantasy. But I'm the one standing here, with real stretch marks, real kicks, real pain." She didn't like that. Her hands clenched. "You don't deserve that, child." Then she shoved me. I didn't trip. I didn't slip. She shoved me. Into the fountain. The splash silenced the courtyard. I landed hard, the cold shocking my skin, my arms cradling my stomach on reflex. The sound of phones unlocking, cameras clicking, murmurs rising. I looked up. Elaine stood above me, calm as a lake, and she smirked. "That's what you get for playing the victim," she whispered. Miles was screaming, running. Someone helped me up, but I wasn't listening. I saw my reflection in the water, hair soaked, dress clinging, face stunned, wrecked. Voiceover. This wasn't just a push, it was her final verdict. I steadied myself, dripping and shaking. "And now," I whispered, "it's my turn." The next morning, I filed the report. It wasn't out of rage. That had passed. It was out of clarity. Elaine had crossed the final line, and I needed it on record. The detective assigned was courteous but guarded. I didn't blame him. When family is involved, people assume exaggeration. Miles and a few guests gave their statements. Some shaky, some clear. Enough to create a timeline. But the moment Elaine was contacted, she turned it into a performance. Claimed I had tripped, that I'd been unsteady and emotional, that she'd tried to help. "She's pregnant. You know how hormones work," she said in her statement. It made me feel nauseous, not from morning sickness, from the sheer audacity, and how easily people nodded along. She lied with such ease, it made me question my own memory. Soon after, whispers returned to the community. Online posts, subtle but sharp. Concern over my mental state, screenshots of my social posts taken out of context, even questions about my fitness to be a mother. Miles tried to shield me from most of it, but you can't unhear betrayal once it takes form. Then came the letter. A formal notice of a mental health evaluation, quietly filed, a petition to assess whether I posed any potential harm to myself or others due to unstable behaviors exhibited in recent months. I stared at the words like they were in another language. They weren't just trying to silence me, they were rewriting who I was. I refused to cry, not then, not when they wanted me to look like I was cracking. A week later, I arrived at the preliminary hearing. I walked in steady, head high, despite my knees buckling beneath the surface. Miles squeezed my hand but said nothing. We both knew this wasn't about truth. This was a game of who could lie better in a courtroom. And Elaine? She played the part. Tears. I've only ever wanted to protect my daughter, but lately, she's been so paranoid. She dabbed her eyes like someone who had practiced in a mirror. Then they called Vanessa. Cousin. Bridesmaid from my first wedding. One of the few people I thought hadn't taken a side. I saw it happen, she said. Lori slipped. Aunt Elaine reached out to catch her. I couldn't breathe. I flashed back to the shower, to Vanessa whispering with Elaine in the corner, nodding. I leaned forward in my chair. Liar, I mouthed. But it was too late. The courtroom shifted. The detective scribbled. My attorney, Dennis, leaned toward me. They've created a reasonable doubt. It weakens the assault case. I wanted to scream, to rip off the microphone on the desk and shout that this was all scripted, staged. But I didn't. I just sat there. If the truth doesn't matter, I thought, what hope is left? After the hearing, we didn't go home. We drove in silence. I stared at the passing lights through the window, listening to the dull hum of defeat echoing through my ribs. That night, an envelope was dropped at our door. No return address. Inside, A court summons. They were filing for emergency family intervention, an accusation that I was mentally unfit to carry my pregnancy to term without supervision. This wasn't justice, I said, staring at the paper. It's warfare. And I was running out of air. The silence was different now. Not peaceful, not numb, just hollow. Like my body was an empty room where grief echoed louder than thought. I didn't leave the house for 3 days after the hearing. Miles tried, bless him, to get me to walk, to eat, to talk, but nothing sounded real anymore. Words felt foreign. I was spiraling inward, and every attempt to pull me out bounced off the walls I didn't remember building. It wasn't until I found the tablet buried in a kitchen drawer that something cracked open. It still had a sticker from when I taught Sunday school. I tapped it on out of instinct. The screen glowed, sluggishly bringing up old videos, vacation clips, church plays, birthdays. And then, one I didn't remember recording. A 5-year-old me sobbing near the backyard pool. Elaine's voice, sharp and rising. "Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about." Followed by a shove. I slipped. My tiny hand scraped the concrete. The camera dropped. I stared at the image frozen on screen, knuckles white from holding the tablet. "She didn't change," I whispered. "I just forgot how cruel she could be." That night I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I wrote down everything I could remember. And then I waited. It was Harold who came next. He knocked on our door just before dinner. His shirt was wrinkled, eyes bloodshot. But it wasn't from age. It was something deeper. Regret, maybe. Fear, too. He didn't wait for an invitation, just stepped inside and sat down like gravity had finally won. "I saw the footage," he said. I didn't ask how. I didn't care. "I should have stopped her a long time ago," he continued, voice flat. But I didn't. I convinced myself it wasn't my place. That silence was safer. I crossed my arms, not out of defiance, but to hold myself together. "She almost drowned me, Dad." "I know." He pulled out a manila envelope. Inside, notarized papers. Petition for separation. His name on the bottom, already signed. "I'm done pretending. She doesn't just hurt people she hates. She hurts the ones who love her." I couldn't speak, not yet. But for the first time since all this started, I saw someone choose me. Not out of pity, but out of truth. "All this time," I murmured, "I was waiting for you to choose." And I did. Too late, but I did. The next day in court, Harold took the stand during the pre-trial hearing. Every breath in the room seemed to hang still. He began with calm facts. Then the tremble came. "I witnessed Elaine shove Lori at age 5. I saw bruises I didn't document. I heard threats I excused." He paused, reaching into his briefcase. "I also withheld this." He handed the judge a thick file, a family therapist's report from over 2 decades ago. Diagnoses, warnings, recommendations for Elaine to seek psychiatric treatment. She made me lie. We all did. Lori, that is me, wasn't the unstable one. I had simply survived a reality that no one wanted to see. The courtroom didn't erupt. It just shifted, a tide changing silently but unmistakably. By that night, social media had caught wind. A journalist friend of Miles reached out for comment. Messages poured in. From strangers, from old friends, from people who once judged and now didn't know where to look. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I curled up on the couch, belly heavy, heart raw, and finally let myself breathe. But the story wasn't done. The next morning, I got a DM from an unfamiliar name, a girl I barely remembered, one of Danica's old roommates. Attached were screenshots, texts from Elaine to Danica, coaching her line by line, how to fake the pregnancy, how to stage the ultrasound, how to plant doubt around me. Voiceover. I thought the worst was over, but the truth had more to give, and this time I would be ready. Continuing the content of the previous chapter. My father's voice still echoed in my mind the day I walked into that courtroom. It felt colder than the last time. Maybe it was just me, or maybe I knew that today would mark the line between before and after, no matter which way it went. Elaine sat 2 rows ahead, perfectly composed in her cream blouse and closed-lipped smile, like she were at brunch and not facing a public reckoning. I didn't expect tears or even shame, but I hoped, quietly, for a flicker of doubt in her eyes. Something human. It never came. The judge's voice rang steady. Elaine was found guilty of misdemeanor assault and psychological abuse. The sentence: court-mandated therapy, a 2-year restraining order, and no unsupervised contact with me or my future child. Miles squeezed my hand under the table. Relief is a strange emotion when it's delivered in a sterile courtroom by a stranger in robes. I felt like clapping, like crying, like collapsing, all at once. But mostly I felt tired. Justice had shown up. But justice doesn't undo years. It doesn't soothe the ache of being unloved by the woman who made you. Elaine didn't look back when she left. Danica never showed, not in court, not in messages. Only her absence remained, and a letter, unsigned, folded once and left in my mailbox. I was never strong enough to leave her shadow. I hope you can be. There were no threats, no sarcasm, just emptiness. I didn't know if I hated her or pitied her, or both. Sarah returned a few weeks later. She stood on my porch, eyes damp, hands in her pockets like a teenager who'd stayed out too late. "I panicked," she said before I could speak, "but I didn't stop caring." We hugged. Not a movie hug, a real one, stiff at first, then trembling. Not everyone leaves, I realized. Some people just get lost for a while. Then the season turned, and with it, my body. Labor came quiet and early, just after midnight on a Tuesday. Miles was calm, but his hands kept trembling when he thought I wasn't looking. Sarah was in the delivery room too. She held my left hand through every contraction. And when my daughter was born, pink, wailing, wrinkled and perfect, I didn't cry right away. I stared at her tiny face, her fists already clenched against the world, and thought, I made this, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. She would never feel the sting of doubt when she looked into her mother's eyes. She'd never have to wonder if love came with conditions. Not on my watch. We named her Grace, because she reminded me that healing wasn't about perfection. It was about persistence. The house was quieter now. No more court dates, no more headlines, just feedings and diapers and the occasional stretch of peace. One afternoon, while Grace napped in my arms, I opened the drawer in my desk. The letter I had written weeks ago was still there, addressed to Elaine, but never stamped. I read it aloud, barely louder than a whisper. I screamed, I begged, I waited. You didn't hear me, maybe you never could. But I see now, I didn't need your apology. I needed to stop bleeding from the same wound. You lost the chance to grow, I didn't. I folded the letter, slid it back into the drawer, and shut it. Later that evening, I walked into the nursery. Grace was asleep, soft breathing rising and falling in rhythm. I glanced at the shelf where I'd kept old family photos. There was one, me as a baby, held by Elaine, smiling with perfect hair and teeth. A picture from another time, another truth. I took it down. No sound, no ceremony, just a choice. And just like that, the past loosened its grip, but never vanished. Sometimes survival means choosing to step out of someone else's story and write your own. I spent so long trying to earn love from people who only knew how to withhold it. But healing, real healing, starts the moment you stop waiting for an apology and start building your peace. If you're going through something that makes you feel small, unseen, or even erased, let this story remind you. Silence is not strength, and being kind doesn't mean staying quiet. You are allowed to fight back, with boundaries, with truth, with dignity. What about you? Have you ever had to walk away from someone who was supposed to protect you? Do you believe people like Elaine can truly change? Or are there some bridges better left burned? If this story moved you, type 1 in the comments, or just tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your story too. And hey, if this video touched your heart, please consider subscribing to this channel so you don't miss what's next. We've got more real stories, raw truths, and powerful voices coming your way.